Most people believe that the very first president of the United States was George Washington. It sounds obvious, right? Washington is on the $1 bill. He led the Continental Army to victory, and in 1789, he was unanimously elected as the first president under the Constitution. But here's the twist. America declared independence in 1776, and the Constitution didn't even exist until more than a decade later. So, who was really the first president? Back then, the young United States was governed under something called the Articles of Confederation. It was a loose agreement between the 13 colonies, and it created a Congress that had the power to appoint a presiding officer, someone who was officially called the President of the United States in Congress assembled. This wasn't a ceremonial nickname, it was the legal title of the person leading the national government years before Washington took office. One of the most famous men to hold this position was John Hanson, a delegate from Maryland. In November 1781, right after the British surrendered at Yorktown, Hanson was unanimously chosen as president under the Articles. And during his single year in office, some incredibly important things happened. For example, it was during Hanson's presidency that the United States officially recognized the peace treaty with Great Britain. He also helped establish the first U.S. Treasury, oversaw the creation of the Foreign Affairs Department, and even proclaimed a national day of Thanksgiving. In other words, while George Washington was still living quietly in Virginia, Hanson was acting as the head of the new American government. Now, here's where the debate begins. Critics argue that Hanson and the other men who held this office before and after him were not truly presidents in the modern sense. The position had very limited powers. The real authority rested with the states, and Congress as a whole was much stronger than any single executive. So while Hanson was technically the first man with the title President of the United States, he didn't command an army, he couldn't veto laws, and he wasn't directly elected by the people. When the Constitution was finally written in 1787 and ratified in 1789, the role of president was redefined into what we recognize today, an independent executive with real national power. And that is why George Washington is officially remembered as the first president, not because nobody came before him, but because his presidency was the beginning of the system that still exists today. So who was the first president of the United States? If you're asking who first carried the title, the answer is John Hanson, elected in 1781 under the Articles of Confederation. But if you're asking who was the first president in the modern sense, the one who shaped the office, commanded national respect, and created the traditions that last more than 2 centuries later, then yes, that honor still belongs to George Washington. It's a reminder that history is rarely as simple as it seems. Sometimes the truth is hidden in plain sight, waiting for us to ask the right question.